This is CBC Here and Now.
Good evening and welcome to this shortened edition of Here and Now. Will be a 30-minute newscast during the Olympics, so let's get to it. There was a jump today in the number of people admitted to hospital in this province due to COVID-19. In the last 24 hours, 5 more people have been hospitalized, bringing the total number to 25 people. 8 of those patients are in critical care. Another 243 confirmed cases have been announced since yesterday. Well, gas prices in the province reached a record high today. Furnace oil and diesel are up as well. Starting today, a litre of self-serve gas costs over $1.70 on the Avalon, more in other parts of the province. The price of home heating oil is up by over 6.5 cents. And while prices are highest in this province, the trend is the same right across the country.
January was definitely active across the province. In fact, 3 places broke the rainfall records for the month. Let's take a look at those numbers there. Showed you these a little bit earlier, St. John's and Stephenville, but Corner Brook also broke that record. 198 millimeters of rain fell for you. And then we also saw some abnormally cold weather up across Labrador, particularly Lab City, Wabush, 4.2 degrees below normal, and that puts you in the 5th coldest coldest January on record. So a couple other places across Labrador saw those temperatures well below the normal, and then the island 2 or 2.6 degrees above where you should normally be sitting. Now those temperatures look like they're continuing through February. I'll have the full forecast coming up.
Thanks, Ashley. Well, the PC opposition leader is calling for an emergency debate in the House of Assembly. This after a CBC Radio Canada report revealed there's division in Justin Trudeau's cabinet over the Bay du Nord project. Now, sources tell CBC that several ministers from Quebec, Ontario, and British Columbia want to reject the project because they feel it's not in line with the Liberal climate change strategy. Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland is reportedly in favor of Bay du Nord, as is Minister Seamus O'Regan, because of the project's economic benefits. But it will be up to the federal environment minister to make the final decision. Provincially, the opposition leader is calling for action.
And we're talking about potentially $100 billion lost to the people in Newfoundland and Labrador. That's not right when we have MPs from Quebec and Ontario and BC deciding the future of the oil and gas industry in Newfoundland and Labrador. We don't accept that. We would hope that the provincial cabinet and the premier will stand up for the people in Newfoundland and Labrador.
Well, meanwhile, the provincial government says it is working with federal partners on that file. Still, with energy news, it wasn't long ago when the Come-By-Chance refinery seemed destined for the scrap heap, but now supporters are feeling a renewed sense of possibility. Here now's Terry Roberts reports.
My prediction is that that facility is entering into a new chapter that's going to be very successful.
Some rare optimism about the future of the troubled refinery in Come-By-Chance.
It's a real exciting opportunity to decarbonize a sector of the economy.
A new ownership group has created a company called Brea Renewable Fuels and is investing hundreds of millions into a major conversion here, transforming a facility that began refining crude oil more than a half-century ago into an operation that will use waste vegetable oils and animal fat to make clean-burning diesel and aviation fuel. Here's the man who is now leading that effort.
And I'm excited to be a part of it.
And here's his pitch for why he believes this plan will work.
You cannot easily electrify long-haul trucking or air transportation, and renewable diesel and sustainable aviation fuel are available today, and they can be used in infrastructure that exists right now to transport it into the global fuels market and to power those trucks and airplanes right now today and reduce our global greenhouse gas emissions.
But it's not a simple switch. There's been a hiring frenzy at the refinery. Engineers and designers are working away. And when the weather warms, some major changes are planned for the former North Atlantic refinery. So far, on budget and on time, with plans to begin producing up to 18,000 barrels of fuel every day later this year.
So it's in work, it's in progress, and it's going really, really well.
So where will the raw material come from? Early on, feedstock will be shipped in from South America. Beyond that,
We're far advanced in discussions with well-known suppliers of feedstock.
as for the final product, Almaraz described the growing market for this type of diesel and aviation fuel as extraordinary, with plenty of competitors entering the business.
There's a big market for it, and that market will grow as we seek to decarbonize the economy globally.
Once in production, the refinery will sustain at least 200 full-time jobs, about half the former workforce. So will Come By Chance ever again refine crude oil? Frank Almaraz says unlikely. Meanwhile, emissions from the union representing workers at the refinery are all positive. President Glenn Nolan told me he believes this is a great project. Terry Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, there's more turmoil at the former Mile 1 Centre. 6 senior staff have left the St. John's Sports and Entertainment Organization in recent months, and retired city employees have been called in to fill the gaps and keep the operation running. Mayor Danny Breen says he can't disclose why the half-dozen former employees are no longer working there. St. John's Sports and Entertainment is owned by the city and runs the Convention Centre and Mary Brown Centre. Breen says he hopes to provide an update on operations in the very near future.
We've kind of went into blackout mode. We're not following what's going on at home or really what's going on in the outside world. We're trying to enjoy this experience here at the Olympics and stay focused on what we're trying to do.
A second straight win for Brad Gushue this morning at the Olympic Winter Games. Team Canada defeated Norway 6-5 in the 10th and final end. The teams were tied until the last rock, making for a very tight game. Team Canada is now 2-0 in the round-robin play. And lots of local support for Team Gushue, especially in Labrador City, the hometown of Team Canada player Mark Nichols. The town put out a call to residents asking them to help cheer on the curling champs, and the fans showed up.
Well, we're very excited to support Team Gushue this year, and obviously we're standing back behind us is the Carroll Curling Club where Mark started out.
All right, like awesome, oh wow, like totally freak me out, step right up. Team Gushue #1!
Well, Gushue's rink plays Switzerland tomorrow morning starting at 8:30 Island time, a half hour earlier in most parts of Labrador. Well, Lunar New Year is a time for friends and family to come together to mark a new beginning. Normally, the Chinese Association of Newfoundland and Labrador hosts a big banquet in honor of the 15-day celebration, but the pandemic has pushed pause on that tradition, so the community is celebrating in other ways.
To me, Lunar New Year is basically about gathering with family and friends and the Chinese community.
It's basically a time where you get to renew, refresh, and gather with your friends, community, and celebrate the coming of a new year, to wave goodbye to the past and welcome a prosperous and healthy present. In a traditional year, the local Chinese Association would put off a New Year's banquet, so that would typically have upwards of 300 attendants, and you'd have a celebration in terms of featured performers, speeches, and always greetings from local community organizations and leaders.
So it could be things like different dances and music, showcasing, what people are doing. And also there's usually presentations with scholarships to students in the Chinese community, showcasing how the Chinese Association is supporting the Chinese community in Newfoundland.
Typically, if there are folks who live out around other parts of the Avalon Peninsula or even from central Newfoundland, they'd make that annual trip in to celebrate New Year's with us. Even though we'd only see them once a year, like when you do gather, it's like, the saying is true that, when you're really good friends, sometimes you can put the pause button on, and when you see again, it's like nothing has changed. You can still share in that sense of joy and community, so that's really important for us too.
At the core of it, people are celebrating with their family and friends, and under COVID, people understand that, and it's important to keep people safe. So they're celebrating in their smaller groups. They're still doing it. It's not as big as it typically would, but that's okay.
In my case, the previous years where I've been celebrating with the larger community, like some of the smaller traditions at home, I've almost overlooked, and I've actually started picking them up again. So it's been interesting.
This weather update is brought to you by the NL 511 app. Know before you go. Check road conditions, highway cameras, and the provincial plow tracker with the NL 511 app.
Well, we definitely got a taste of spring today. The birds were chirping, nice bluebird skies out there as well, thanks to a ridge of high pressure to our south. Let's take a look at what's going on out there across the board. Actually, most of the island is seeing those clear skies today. Some clouds moving in up across Labrador, out ahead of the next system, that area of low pressure moving in. But taking a look at the daytime highs today, in the single digits on the plus side of the mercury for most of the island, 4 to 6 degrees. As you head towards central, and then a little bit cooler for the northern peninsula, -1, but those warm temperatures up across Labrador as well. Makkovik -1, Lab City saw a high near -3 today. That is well above where you should be sitting this time of year. Those temperatures still there right now. Not much of a wind chill because there's not a whole lot of wind out there, but it is feeling more like -4 in St. John's right now. So if you are planning on heading out to enjoy this beautiful evening, you might want some gloves, maybe a hat through the evening hours tonight. And the temperatures shouldn't move too much more from where they are now. However, the winds will pick up a little bit. So they'll be out of the southwest, somewhere between 20 to 40 kilometers per hour. But like I said, minus single digits. Same thing for southeastern half of Labrador. And then temperatures are going to drop like a rock for Lab City tonight. -21 is what you're going to be feeling like, or rather what your temperature is going to be. And those winds are going to ramp up as well. Northwesterlies gusting somewhere between 30 to 50 kilometers per hour. Now that is going to come with the potential for some snow through the night. In fact, most of the big lands should see the potential for some flurries. We'll see that as well for the island. It should be fairly scattered, but there is still that chance that we may see a few showers in the mix as well before we see that temperature drop in some areas. But overall, the potential for showers and flurries will increase as we get towards the morning hours and then eventually spreading east as we head through the day. Now, the eastern half of the island is where we could see that potential for some showers tomorrow afternoon. And that again is because we're going to see those temperatures climb back up well above zero. Clearing skies the story for Labrador, and eventually we will see those skies clear across most of the island as well, with some flurries moving back in towards the early morning hours for Lab West. Taking a look at the temperatures for tomorrow, again 1 to 5 degrees. The winds will be a bit more breezy though, out of the southwest between 40 to 50 kilometers per hour. Going to hang on to those mild temperatures for the southeast and as well as Happy Valley Goose Bay across the Big Land. But again, that temperature fairly cold again for Lab City, hovering around -21. Now, as we get into Friday night into Saturday, that's when the next system will move in. It's going to start to bring in some snow for Lab West and eventually across the Big Land as we head through the day on Saturday. But we're still in that southerly flow for the island. So Northern Peninsula, you may see some flurry activity with this one, but overall it should be showers, maybe the higher elevations as well. But there you go. Temperatures again, 4 to 7 degrees above zero, with the temperatures dropping for Labrador, -9 for Happy Valley Goose Bay, but again with that light snow. Now we're going to continue that mild trend through Sunday for St. John's and Eastern Newfoundland. By the time we get to Monday, watching the next system potentially, depends on the track, but we could see some snow with that one. It should clear out by the time we get into Tuesday. It may reach as far as central Newfoundland, but the west you should just see flurries and then temperatures in and around -10. For Eastern Labrador, beautiful start to next week. Same thing for the west, but a little bit colder in the mid-20s. Taking a look at the weather photo for today, definitely feels like spring out there. This is a great shot Josephine captured from Mundy Pond. Thank you for that. If you have any weather photos, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Welcome back. Well, vaccines and boosters are protecting many people from getting severe forms of COVID, but even with protections, dozens have died in the most recent wave and hundreds test positive every day. So as the province plans to open up, how can the vulnerable protect themselves? Peter Cowan sat down with the Chief Medical Officer of Health.
As we shift from having more restrictive measures where the province says these are the things you can do, these are the things you can't do, are we essentially shifting to an environment where people have to make their own decisions about their own level of risk that they're willing to accept?
Yeah, I think that is part of where we have to be now moving forward. We have to be able to do that assessment for ourselves, you know? So am I somebody who, well, first of all, am I vaccinated and am I boosted? And then do I have other health conditions that might put me at higher risks for, some of the more severe effects of COVID? Am I in that age group? And then saying, am I going somewhere that's going to put me at higher risk? Are there going to be a lot of people there? Are people not going to be wearing their masks? Is there a potential that, I could come into contact with that virus? And then, take precautions. It's not to say that you can't go, but if you are going, perhaps you do wear your mask. You make sure you try to keep your distance as much as you can. You make sure you wash your hands carefully, and that you pay close attention to any symptoms that you may have. There are some medications that are coming out now that may be able to reduce the risk of hospitalization. They're not going to be a panacea, and they certainly do not replace vaccination. But, knowing if you have COVID in the early stages, if you're in that group that could be at risk, you certainly may be able to reduce your risk. There are a lot of things that we as individuals can do to try to make sure that, we're protecting ourselves as much as possible.
When I talk to some people who are in that high-risk group, I hear a lot of worry from them that opening up and easing measures, it feels like there's a trade-off, that we're saying we're going to allow this to happen, and for those who are at higher risk, that you're going to have to now take on this risk yourself, that, that COVID may in fact end up being deadly. What do you say to people who are now feeling like they're sort of being left on their own, and for them this is still something that could be very serious?
Yeah, so certainly, I understand an individual's angst when it comes to that kind of decision making. There's no doubt that I think it is stressful, and we've been able to rely on the measures that we've had in place to be able to protect. But COVID was never going to go away, and COVID is something that's always going to be with us. So this had to happen regardless. We couldn't keep locked down forever. And so this assessment of personal risk was going to have to happen regardless. I think right now we're in a good place in that, we have a milder variant circulating, and we are very well vaccinated, and more people are getting boosted all the time. So that's really good. But this is. Anyone who has those complications, those risks are still there every year when it comes to circulating viruses that can put people in hospital, that can give you severe disease. So these assessments, we don't think about it in terms of flu, but flu can have the same complications and severity as COVID can. And, these sort of assessments have to be done really all the time by people, when it comes to your own health. Just, I guess, like you make assessments, we all make assessments about, what's an acceptable risk every day, right?
Tara Moriarty, who's a researcher at the University of Toronto, has done some modeling on what it may mean if most people, in fact, the number she used was 90% of the population gets COVID. And she estimates that it could mean between 500 to 600 total deaths if everyone were to get it. That's even with the boosters, that's, even with all the protection that we have in place. Do we just kind of have to accept that that's going to happen?
Well, I don't know that we have to accept that that's going to happen. I mean, I haven't reviewed that study in particular, and so it's difficult for me to comment on it. I think, we have to accept that people die of all kinds of things, and infections included. I mean, that is, you can't prevent everything. So there is going to be some level that, of life moving forward that has to have that acceptance. But, we certainly, I think it's the numbers, we may not see it there. I mean, we haven't seen it with other illnesses and that are similar at this point. So, it's very hard to take that information and say if it's, to use it to predict. I think at this point, we are still learning as we move forward, right?
But if we look ahead to the summer, for example, do you see a summer under which we are essentially back to normal?
Well, I hate to predict in COVID, because every time I've tried to predict something, we've had a new variant that's popped up. And, right before Christmas, I was so excited about kids being vaccinated, saying this was the last hurdle, and then boom, Omicron, So we have to be careful. But I think barring things, if we are able to open, in a graduated fashion, and we're able to keep cases and hospitalizations under control, and we see that that's the case, and I think we will have a more normal summer. But I don't want to say that it's going to be just as it was before. But I think people will be. I think our experiences will be more as they have been in the past.
That was Dr. Janice Fitzgerald speaking with Here and Now's Peter Cowan. Turning now to national news, the city of Windsor is going to court to end the blockade of the Ambassador Bridge. The link between Windsor and Detroit is one of the most economically important border crossings in North America. The U.S.-bound lane has been shut down and all international traffic has stopped. Politically, there is a shift in support from the Conservative Party. Interim leader Candice Bergen is now calling for an end to the border blockades, saying it's causing economic harm. Speaking on the situation in downtown Ottawa, MP Seamus O'Regan questions if the group should still be referred to as protesters. He says they're disobeying the law and people are losing patience.
They are making life extraordinarily difficult or impossible for people who work there and live there and who attempt to make a living there. People, as I said, many of whom, 58% of the general workforce, can't afford to take an hour, can't afford to take a day, and they are missing hours and they are missing days. We'll see how the next few days go, but I think Canadians generally aren't the only ones who are losing their patience with this sort of thing.
And for more on that developing situation in Ontario, you can head to our website, cbc.ca. Well, we appreciate you spending part of your evening with us. Hope you can join us tomorrow. A reminder for curling fans, Team Gushue plays Switzerland tomorrow morning at 8:30 Island time. Good night, everyone.